Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and we haven't looked at recent sales over at ComicLink in a while, and it was really frustrating because I was out of town recently as this auction session was ending. They started a new session, and everything that I was watching and bidding on got erased from my watch list, so I kind of had to cobble together a revised list, and I couldn't find some of the books that I knew were in this last auction. It's a real mess on ComicLink when you're trying to go through historical data, and I think they do that on purpose just so you can't track anything. It makes it really frustrating to make these videos. So lesson learned that I'll need to make this monthly summary of ComicLink auction prices before the new auction starts. But we still have a pretty good list here of items, and I'll have some ancillary comments related to some of the books that I had on my watch list that I wanted to talk about. Most of these are kind of Copper Age, Bronze Age books, but just some interesting sales. We'll start off with the Star Wars books. For those of you that only collect Star Wars books, you don't have to watch the rest of the video. So there were a number of different Star Wars books that sold. First, obviously, Star Wars #1. Not a perfect wrap on it. You know, it had a little bit of a miswrap, but that one's come back down just a smidge. It sold at $2,800 for a 9.8 with white pages. Last month, $3,200 was kind of the going rate, although that one was kind of perfectly centered. But still, it's a very minor miswrap on this one that you can see here on the left-hand side. So $2,800, good value. I mean, it's starting to get lower and lower and lower ever so slowly. It's just one of those books that has really held up fairly well despite the correction in comic books. Here is Star Wars #42, the first Boba Fett. This one had a really bad miswrap that you can see on the left-hand side. So you can see how badly that one was miswrapped. It still gets the 9.8, which I mean, we've talked about this in the comments for these videos. I personally don't think that a book that has this bad of a miswrap should be able to qualify for a 9.8, no matter how good the book is. I don't care if it has no spine ticks, it's, you know, otherwise perfect. If it's got that bad of a miswrap, I feel like the max grade that it should get is a 9.6. That's my personal opinion. But it does keep the price down if you're looking for a 9.8. If you know, it does keep the price down a little bit. So this one sold in an auction for $700. So that's a good solid $200 to $250 less than where a normal 9.8 direct edition of Star Wars 42 would sell with a clean wrap. So you do get a discount relative to what a cleaner version would sell for with a clean wrap, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't think it should qualify for a 9.8 with that bad of a miswrap. Here is Star Wars 44 direct edition. This is the first time that Vader tells Luke that he's his father. So this is obviously an adaptation of The Empire Strikes Back. Really great cover. I always love this cover. I've got this one in a newsstand. This was the direct edition, Duel a Dark Lord. Really cool. So this is just the Bespin Duel kind of adaptation. That one sold for $121, which is about right. For my newsstand 9.8, I paid about $200. It's probably more like even 175-ish now. It's come back down even a little bit more. This was an interesting sale. This one was they label it a reprint / multi-pack edition. I don't know if I'd call it a reprint because this is the Whitman's, I believe, don't quote me on this. This is kind of the Whitman's direct edition that came in multi-packs. It's interesting because I have Star Wars #17, which is the first Violet Valance, and it's a multi-pack edition. It's not labeled reprint though, and I feel like reprint kind of gives it the connotation that it's a later reprint, but this one was from August of 1977. This was also signed by Ewan McGregor, so this is the first appearance of Obi-Wan in comics, signed by Ewan McGregor. It's kind of a terrible signature because you can't really see it that well. It's right below Luke there in black. So that's kind of unfortunate. I think all of those factors combined with even the miswrap too. This one had a bad miswrap too. So it's a multi-pack edition. It's got a terrible signature that you can barely see, and it's really poorly wrapped. So this one sold for $291. Now a standard, Star Wars #42, like the retail version, newsstand edition, that one can go for like $1,100, $1,300. So that's a pretty big discount for a book that came out on the Whitmans. And I would think that this one would have a lower census count on the CGC census than a 9.8, just given that, these Whitman directs are very tough to find. But anyway, that one, it's the single highest graded example too, which is I found interesting. but it's still only sold for $291. So anyway, just a kind of an interesting variant of Star Wars #2. Here is the Phantom Menace #3. This is the first cover for Darth Maul. There's 2 different cover variants. This is the one I like the most. Really great cover on this one. And that one sold for $111. For the longest time, this was like $200 to $250, if not $300. So it continues to drop in price. I wanted to bid on this one. I just forgot about it. But that's one I would have paid $111 all day long for that. That's a really good book there for a very reasonable price. Just an awesome cover for Darth Maul. So that is the Star Wars books that I had on this list. I'm sure there were others, but it's just trying to find them in the closed auctions was tough. Here is the first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet, which is Silver Surfer #44 from Volume 3. A really great cover with Thanos and the Silver Surfer. And that one was the direct edition. This is not a particularly rare book. It's from 1990. Pretty easy to find this one. And it did say this item has been sent to CGC for a brand new holder. So I don't know if that had a crack on it or what, but you know, that's the first time I've ever seen that from ComicLink. So apparently if you ship something to ComicLink as a submission for, you know, for consignment, if the case breaks in shipping, then I guess ComicLink will send it off to CGC to get reholdered. So I thought that was an interesting side note, that ComicLink will take that and resend it and guarantee it that it comes back the same grade. Anyway, that one sold for $200, which I thought was a pretty fair deal. This one is that's about the going rate for this book. In a newsstand, you're probably talking closer to $300 to $350. But for the first appearance of the Infinity Gauntlet, you know, it's just kind of a classic book. It's not like a book that I expect to jump in value or anything. They've covered the Infinity Gauntlet at length with the Avengers movies, but I do think that it's just kind of a cool book to have for the collection. That's one I've off and on bid on, and I've just always lost. Incredible Hulk #340. Let's get into some Deadpool versus Wolverine, or Deadpool and Wolverine. If you haven't seen the movie, it's amazing. I will warn you that for the next 3 or 4 minutes, there's going to be some minor spoilers. Very minor. It doesn't ruin the movie plot, but there are going to be some minor spoilers here. So I wanted to go through some of the key books as it relates to Deadpool and Wolverine. And as I expected, it is a massive hit, and it has blown through all expectations. It's the #1 R-rated movie grossing of all time. I really loved the movie. It was just a fantastic ride, and I really enjoyed it. One of the subtle homages in the movie during one of the scenes showed Wolverine with the Hulk reflecting in the claws, and I had a subtle feeling that they were going to show that. I just wish they had shown an actual fight between Hulk and Wolverine. They just showed this particular scene, though, from Incredible Hulk #340, showing the reflection of Hulk. And it was actually the Green Hulk in the movie, but this is the Gray Hulk, and this is a book I've got 3 copies of. And this one was a 9.8. This one's come back down a little bit. It sold for $883. Last month, it sold for about $900. I think now's a really good time to pick this book up. It's not hard to find in a 9.8, but it's a classic that I think it's a blue chip book that whether you get the direct or the very expensive newsstand, I just think long term, this is a good book to have from the Copper Age in your collection. I just love it. And it's a classic Todd McFarlane book. It's going to hold up. You know, it has dropped, yes, but I do think it's one of those books that it's a must-have for the collection. So that one did sell for $883. Now's a great time to buy it. It's really dropped a lot. Next up, speaking of Deadpool, this is the first appearance of Deadpool. This is the direct edition. There was also a newsstand edition that sold. I could not find it because ComicLink's search function for closed auctions is complete garbage. This one did have some smudging in the upper left by the Comic Codes Authority. So, you know, I think that if I was going to spend $1,100, I would want it to be perfect. This one does have a factory kind of smudge, and that's just a printer error. Again, CGC does not hurt the grade when you have smudges like this. They consider that to be a factory thing. Smudges. I personally think it should be precluded from getting a 9.8 if it's got that smudge like that. I don't know if it's coming through. I'm going to try and do a close-up here for you, but there you go. So if you look right there, Marvel Comics right there, It's got a really bad smudge above the Comic Codes Authority there. In my opinion, that it should not get a 9.8. I mean, that's just the way. And I found like a Star Wars 42. That's another book that has that, right by Dengar and right on the Star Wars logo. That's another book that's pretty infamous for getting a really bad printer error with a smudge that goes all the way through the book. And I've seen a number of 9.8s like that. So anyway, this one sold for $1,100. Don't pay $1,100. This book is going to drop a lot, okay? I know the movie was successful, but we're kind of come and gone with Deadpool and Wolverine. I am trying to pick this book up this fall. This is a book that I want to get. I'd like to get the newsstand. But as I talked about a second ago, there was one in a 9.8 newsstand that was really nice. It was Primo, but it sold for $2,500. And then there was another one that sold for $2,100 because it was not Primo. And what the difference is how the book is cut. And I think I've talked about this in past videos, but Domino, or the fake Domino, the foot often gets cut off in how the book is cut on the front cover. And so the bottom of her foot will often get cut off. So this is a perfect copy in terms of the framing on it. It's perfectly centered. There was one that was a newsstand that had her foot cut off. That one sold for like $2,100. It might have even been less. It might have been like $2,000. And then there was a perfectly centered one. It was absolutely perfect. That was a newsstand. And I was really tempted to bid on it, but it got too high. It sold for $2,500. I think I'm going to be able to find one this fall when people have moved on to other things. And they're already going to start getting excited about the new Avengers movie. We've got Thunderbolts. We've got Captain America. Brave New World coming. We've got Venom 3 coming. There's going to be a lot of other comic book related movies that people are going to start focusing on. And I think New Mutants 98 will kind of fall back down a little bit. So I expect this book to drop by a few $100 as people's attention moves elsewhere. Right now is a bad time to buy it because the movie's hot right now. But anyway, so that's one I'm trying to get this fall if I can swing it. But that one did sell for $1,100. If you're going to get a direct edition, don't spend more than like $950, maybe $1,000. They sell all day long on Instagram, like every week pretty much. And some of the big consignment groups on Instagram for like $950, $1,000. So this one sold for $1,100, even despite that smudge on the Comic Codes Authority. Don't spend that much money. NYX, we had the first appearance of X-23 Laura Kinney in this book. It's a great cover. And obviously she made her a small appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine, reappearance, I should say, from the Logan movie. And she's all grown up now. So it was just, everything about that movie was great with all the cameos. This book has really come back down to earth. This one got up to like $1,800 about a year ago. Then now it's selling at $900. That's pretty tempting. That's a pretty tempting price point now that it's under $1,000. And I love this cover. I just absolutely love it. So that's one that's kind of on my radar. I wouldn't mind having that one. That's a really nice one. Likewise, Wolverine number 8. This is kind of a great cover. It's not like a first appearance, but it shows Joe Fixit with Patch, the two kind of personas for Hulk and Wolverine. Obviously, we saw a very brief appearance of Patch in Deadpool and Wolverine. So this is a book I'd like to get. I'd like to get it at a newsstand, but this direct edition sold for $250. So that's another book that's come back down. He got up to like $350, even like a few months ago. So $250 is more in the ballpark of what I'm willing to spend on that. Again, Wolverine Limited Series number 1. This is every month. They have like 10 copies of it, and it's dropped like a rock. $447. There's just a lot of people that are resubmitting this book right now because they're trying to get 9.9s for it. So there's a ton of people buying 9.8s, cracking them open, doing 25 book submissions of Wolverine Limited Series, trying to get the 9.9. And they're being, some of them are being very successful with it. So you're just seeing a lot of 9.8s just dumped after they come back from CGC from the pre-screen. If it only got a 9.8, they just dump it on eBay or on Instagram or here on ComicLink. And every single month, there's 5 of these. So if I'm going to get this one, I'm going to get a newsstand. And I have bid on a newsstand a couple of times. I've just lost out. That's held its value very well. $1,100 to $1,200 minimum, I would say, is about the going rate for a newsstand for this book. The direct edition is going for $450-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. This one sold for $447. It's the first solo Wolverine comic book. Great Frank Miller cover, but in my opinion, I wouldn't buy it in a direct edition. There's just so many of them. There's like 2,000 on the census, if not more. Saga of Swamp Thing, another book that I thought was kind of interesting. First full appearance of John Constantine in a 9.8. That one sold for $12.24. Another book that's come way back down. It was kind of $1,700-ish the last time I looked at one of these that sold. But it's $12.24 right now. No one really cares about Swamp Thing, it seems. Two different Transformers #1 sold in a direct edition. Origin and first appearance of the Autobots and Decepticons. This one was an old case, and it was also a very faded cover. This is something I've talked about in past videos. If you're looking for Transformers #1, just be careful, because a lot of them have a very faded color strike on the cover. And this is one of those. So look at this one, which had an older case and sold for $9.59. So look how kind of faded it looks, and compare it to this one, which is a much brighter, sharper kind of color strike on there. With a brand new case, freshly graded. You can tell by the serial number, freshly graded. And that one sold for $1,200. So again, this one sold for $9.59, and someone's willing to pay an extra $250, which is a pretty significant premium percentage-wise for a newer case style with a fresh, stronger, sharper colors. And that's what I did on mine. I have one of these, and I paid up for mine because it's just the fade on some of these. It's just the color strike at factory. It's not like it was faded, sun faded. It's just how it was hit on the paper. So just something to keep in mind on that one. But $950 to $1,200 is a going rate for Transformers #1 in a direct edition. A 9.6 for X-Men 101. This is the origin and first appearance of Phoenix. In a 9.8, it's very pricey, very, very pricey. A 9.6 is kind of more my speed. Even that's very expensive, obviously. $19.21 was the final sales price on that for a 9.6 with white pages. You're probably over, I think, over $5,000 for a 9.8. So that's too high for me. I'm not paying that. I'd be happy with a 9.6 though. That's a nice book. That's a really nice book. Some other X-Men books I had my eye on. X-Men 121. This is the first full appearance of Alpha Flight in a 9.8. X-Men 120 in a 9.8 is very pricey. That's like $3,600. That's the first cameo for Alpha Flight. I like this cover better, but it's just not as expensive. No one cares about the first full appearance for whatever reason. Some books, the first full appearance matters, like Hulk 181, and some of them, like X-Men 120, where the first cameo is the more expensive book. So this one sold for $977. That's kind of a little high. I would try to aim for under $900 if you can. $977 is a little high to me, but I've seen them go for $900, sub $900. So I think that's a reasonable price expectation. Here's one in my own collection. This is X-Men 133. This was a 9.8 old case style, but this is the first solo Wolverine cover. And this one sold for $752. I thought that was a really good deal. I paid about $900 for mine. Might have been $950 for mine. But it was freshly graded, perfectly centered. This one had nice centering on it, but just an older case. But I thought that was a great deal. So this book has come down a little bit at $750. That's a price I'd pay in a heartbeat, even with the older case. Speaking of cameos from Deadpool and Wolverine, we obviously briefly saw Gambit, and I thought he was kind of corny. He was a little corny. The New Orleans kind of accent was a little much, but I thought it was cool to see him, So Uncanny X-Men 266, first full appearance of Gambit, and that one sold for $551. That's another book in a direct edition that's easy to find, and it really hasn't popped because I think it was kind of old news that Gambit was going to make an appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine. So this book is just so plentiful on the census that no one cares. The newsstand, that's a different story. You're probably going to be talking $1,500 to $1,600 for a newsstand for X-Men 266. It's a similar story to Wolverine Limited Series #1. I think if you're going to get it, try to aim for the newsstand, although you got to pay a significant premium, a significant multiple relative to the direct edition. Next up, another book I like is Uncanny X-Men 268. It's kind of a weird origin of Captain America and Black Widow and Wolverine's first meeting. So it's just a book I like. I love the Jim Lee cover. In a direct edition, it's really cheap, $137. I think you could go a lot worse than buying this, because with the new Avengers movie coming out, there's probably a slight chance that we see Hugh Jackman there. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think it's a great cover. I just love this cover. And, in a direct edition, it's a pretty low risk proposition at $130, $150. And what else do we have? We had a Ultimate Fallout 4 in the first print, first Miles Morales. I told you that I keep waiting on this book. I'd like to get it. It keeps dropping in price. Last month it was like $950. This month this one sold for $865. So now we're sub $900 now. Does it get to $500? I don't know. I think if it gets to $500, it's going to be hard for me not to buy it. But I just keep waiting, and it keeps dropping in price. So it's not like it's hard to find. It's super plentiful on the census. Remember, this book used to be like $4,000, $4,500 it peaked at. So now we're selling for $865. It's unbelievable how much it's dropped, but it's not really that surprising, just given how many of them there are out there. But it's Miles, and I love Miles, so I do want to get one eventually. And then Web of Spider-Man is the last book, Web of Spider-Man 32. It's a book that I absolutely love. Great cover from Mike Zeck. And this one was kind of heating up a little bit because we got Craven coming out in theaters this fall. That's another movie that's coming out this fall. I hope it's good. I'm not sure about it. But anyway, this one got up to like $450, and now it's dropped back down to exactly what I paid for it, which is $300. This one sold for $300 in a direct edition. So I just love that cover. It's one of my favorite Mike Zeck covers, and $300 is probably about right. That's probably the number I'd aim for, or below, if you're lucky. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at some recent sales on ComicLink. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.